The ones who build legacies, they begin in silence, not in noise, not in the clamor of applause or the shallow rush of validation, but in the quiet hours, before dawn breaks, before the world demands anything of them. They are listening, not to the world, but to something deeper, something eternal, their own mind. You want to know where millionaire habits begin. They begin where the average man refuses to go into the silence, because silence is not empty. It's full of answers. You see, the man who builds wealth, true wealth, the kind that feeds generations, he doesn't just chase money, he chases mastery, mastery of his own thoughts, his own time, his own direction. And that begins where the crowd ends, because in the crowd there's chatter, distraction, reaction, but in silence. There is creation. Think of Edison sitting night after night in his lab, eyes weary, fingers blistered, yet vision unshaken. A man willing to burn 10,000 failures into the dark before he brought the world the light. Not once did he wait for applause. He listened to the silence, and the silence answered with fire. Ford heard it too. While others mocked his vision of horseless engines, he retreated into thought, into obsession, into the discipline of focus, not to escape the noise, but to build something louder than doubt. This is where it begins. Before you build a business, before you build a brand, you must build a mind that doesn't flinch when alone. Because silence is the forge of thought, and thought is the blueprint of all riches. Most people run from it. They need the screen, the scroll, the next hit of dopamine, but the builder, the one who will command millions, he confronts it. He says, let me meet the quiet, let me meet myself there, because here's the truth. You cannot develop millionaire habits until you understand what governs the million. And the million doesn't come from strategy alone. It comes from clarity, clarity of vision, clarity of decision, clarity of intention, and clarity lives in silence. It is in silence that belief takes root. That purpose becomes more than an idea. It becomes an oath. It is in silence that the next great move is not guessed. It is known, because the mind, uninterrupted, becomes a channel, not just for thought, but for power. You must learn to sit with your thoughts until they stop screaming. You must teach your mind to serve you, not sabotage you, not distract you, not delay you. You must strip away the noise and ask, what do I really want? What do I really believe? And more than anything, am I willing to become the man who deserves it? Because habits are not born from motivation. They are born from conviction, and conviction is quiet. It doesn't need to be shouted. It simply is like a mountain unmoved by wind or storm. If you ever study the greats, you'll notice a pattern. It's not the flash, the charisma, the big talk that built their empires. It was their consistency in the dark, their rituals when no one was watching, their non-negotiables while the world slept. They woke before the sun not to impress, but to align, to command their day before the day could command them, and that, right there, is a millionaire habit. To command time, to command thought, to command discipline, but none of that can be commanded until it is first heard, and that hearing only happens in silence. You want to separate yourself from the average? Then learn to crave the stillness, because in stillness you begin to see where you've been living blind. You start to notice the patterns you've tolerated, the habits you've inherited, the thoughts that don't belong to you, but have been running you. Silence gives you dominion. It gives you the throne of your own inner kingdom, and from that throne you build one deliberate thought, one exacting action, one unshakable habit at a time. This is where the real war is won. Not in the marketplace, not on the stage, but behind closed doors, where you either build or betray your future. So ask yourself, what does your silence say when the world is quiet, when the phone is down, when there's no one watching? Are you building, or are you avoiding? Are you reflecting, or are you escaping? Because the ones who become unstoppable, they aren't loud in the beginning, they're dangerous in the beginning. Quietly, patiently, building a mind so disciplined that the world must respond. They're not showing off their goals. They're sculpting their identity, because they know what you must come to know. The habits of a millionaire are not just what he does, they are who he becomes. And becoming starts in silence. Silence is the altar where identity is reborn, not inherited, not passed down, but forged. Every man has two choices when he meets himself in the stillness: to face the raw truth of who he is, or to run from it, and most run. They drown their doubts in distractions. They bury their fear under busyness. They confuse motion with progress. But the ones who rise above mediocrity, they know that facing the silence is not a punishment. It's a rite of passage, because you don't build millionaire habits on a foundation of noise. You build them on awareness. You begin by understanding exactly what drives you, not what drives the world. Not what your friends want, not what society says. What drives you at your core, when no one's looking, when nothing is guaranteed. That's what silence reveals. It pulls back the layers. It strips you of performance. And it demands that you see what's underneath. Do you have a vision, or are you drifting? Do you have standards, or do you conform? Do you wake up with purpose, or do you just wake up? A man without clarity is a slave to circumstance. But a man who sits with silence until his vision becomes louder than doubt, he becomes inevitable. He doesn't ask for permission to grow. He doesn't wait for external motivation. He doesn't need a perfect environment. He creates one within himself. Let me tell you something history keeps proving. The men who changed the world were not the ones screaming to be heard. They were the ones who withdrew into thought, returned with fire, and acted with relentless precision. Walt Disney was rejected over 300 times before a single bank would fund his dream. You think he didn't know silence. He lived in it. He dreamed in it. He believed in it. When the world said he was a fool. And that's the power you access when you stop waiting for the world to validate your dream, when you go silent enough to validate it yourself. You don't need noise. You need vision. You need a mind so focused that it can hear the faint whisper of destiny and move on it. But focus is a discipline. It doesn't arrive, it's trained, and you train it in silence. Let the others scroll, react, panic. Let them chase every trend, every tactic, every shortcut. You master the fundamentals. You build the inner muscle that cannot be faked: clarity, conviction, commitment. Those three, fused together, create an unstoppable mind, and from that mind comes the habits that shape destiny, habits that aren't dependent on feelings, habits that don't fold under pressure, habits that build momentum day by day until the world has no choice but to watch. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You will never create those habits if your environment controls your mind. You must learn to own your space, to own your mornings, to own your solitude. Millionaires don't start with millions. They start with minute, guarded fiercely. They wake up when the world sleeps, not to hustle for applause, but to program their mind before the world can infect it. They meditate, they write, they move, they visualize, they strategize, and all of it happens before the first text, the first email, the first meeting, because they know, if they don't direct the mind, the world will. And if the world directs the mind, the mission is already compromised. So look at your day. Who commands it? Who owns your first hour? Because the first hour is the throne, and whoever sits on that throne rules your life. It should be you with your thoughts aligned, you with your intentions locked in, you with your goals not just written down, but burning in your chest. That's what silence is for. Not to escape the world, but to shape how you enter it. Because the man who enters the day from silence doesn't react. He leads. He's not pulled by every email, every opinion, every distraction. He moves with mission, with control, with power. That's the habit of a millionaire. Not chaos, not urgency, but composure, and composure is born in the morning silence when your thoughts meet discipline, and your discipline meets destiny. Don't underestimate what you're giving away when you skip this. You're not just losing time, you're losing alignment, and alignment is everything. Because a misaligned man, no matter how hard he works, will build the wrong empire. But an aligned man, he'll do in 1 year what others couldn't do in 10. Because every action is calibrated, every move is intentional, every day is connected to a vision, that level of clarity does not come from noise. It comes from you in silence, demanding the truth of yourself and answering with discipline. And that discipline, it becomes habit, and that habit, it becomes character, and that character, it builds wealth, not just in your bank account, but in your mindset, your relationships, your legacy. But it all begins in that sacred, underestimated place, but silence alone is not the key. It is what you do with it that defines your future. You must not sit in stillness to escape life. You sit in stillness to prepare for it, because silence is not passive. It is the most active battlefield of the mind. It's where you meet your fears without flinching, where you question your excuses with ruthless honesty, where you stare down your mediocrity and say, "You will not survive in me any longer." That is the sacred war waged by the few. And those few become the builders of empires. Carnegie understood this. He once said that concentration, deep, unwavering mental concentration, was more valuable than genius. And where did he find that concentration? Not in the noise of the factory, not in the applause of success, but in deliberate, disciplined solitude. He created systems of thought that scaled into systems of wealth. And it all started with the mental discipline of silence. What are you creating when no one's watching? That's the real test. Are you creating thoughts that build, or doubts that destroy? You see, habits are not just physical motions repeated over time. They are spiritual declarations. They say to the universe, "This is who I am becoming, and I will not be moved." Every morning you rise early. When it's uncomfortable, you're casting a vote for your future identity. Every time you plan your day before chaos enters it, you're proving that your vision is stronger than your vices. And every time you silence the noise and return to your thoughts with intent, you're strengthening the single most powerful weapon you'll ever wield, your inner world. The truth is, you cannot outperform your self-image. And you cannot upgrade your self-image until you confront it. In silence, that's where you rewire it. That's where you replace the voice that says, "I'm not ready," with "I was born for this." That's where you throw out the question, "Who am I to do this?" and replace it with the decision, "I am the one who does this." This is not just personal development. This is personal evolution, and evolution demands environment. So you must build an environment of silence around you. Carve it out, guard it like it's sacred, because it is. Wake before the notifications, cut the music, shut the noise, and listen not to the world, but to the future calling from within. In that stillness you begin to remember. You remember the version of yourself before you compromised, before you settled, before you let the world numb your greatness. And then, piece by piece, you build habits not just for performance, but for transformation. You start designing mornings that move you forward, not rushed, not reactive, but ritualized. Wake, breathe, visualize, train, write, own the day before it owns you. That is the DNA of a millionaire. Not luck, not inheritance, not hustle without aim, but precision rituals repeated with discipline until they become who you are. Understand this deeply. If your day is not designed, your destiny is not deliberate. And nothing powerful is built by accident. You think Lincoln led a divided nation through war and crisis by accident. No. He was a man of deep reflection, a man who would walk for hours in silence, thinking, strategizing, feeling the weight of every decision before he spoke it into law. Greatness is quiet in the beginning, and so are the habits that lead to it. So take the silence seriously, turn it into strategy. And let it birth the mind of a builder, because once that mind is born, Nothing on earth can stop it.